Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wake Up. On today's show, we're going to be talking about, obviously, Joe Biden's rapid flip on abortion. Also, we'll be talking about, at the White House, Mexico proposing a possible deal to avoid the tariffs. Globally, anyway, Trump family members are promoting themselves on the European trip. Also, the importance of the 2020 census question. So there is a lot of stuff to talk about today. We got a packed wake up here for you on this Friday. And first, we started with Joe Biden. That was fast. After sharp criticisms from his campaign rivals and Democratic interest groups, Joe Biden had a shocking change of view on Thursday night, a day after his campaign told NBC News he didn't want to repeal the Hyde Amendment. Biden announced during a speech at the Democratic National Committee's African American Leadership Summit in Atlanta he can no longer support the ban on federal funding for abortion. The key quote here is, "We've seen state after state, including Georgia, passing extreme laws." Biden explained to the crowd of the dramatic U-turn. "It's clear that these folks are going to stop at nothing to get rid of Roe." For those just getting up to speed on Biden's roller coaster month on abortion, it's already becoming really an issue to define the 2020 race, who supports it and who doesn't, and to what degree. And it really does seem like, by the way, pretty much everyone supported it except for him. At the beginning of May, Biden told an ACLU volunteer on tape he committed to abolishing the Hyde Amendment, a departure from his career-long opposition to the federal fund, to most federal funding for abortion procedures. Then Biden's campaign said on Tuesday that he had not actually changed the position and still supported the amendment, claiming that Biden had misheard the woman on the rope-like and thought she was referring to the Mexico City rule. This was all capped by a pivot back again to Biden's reversal on the matter last night, supporting a repeal of the amendment. Why? From a Biden advisor to the Associated Press, some aides were surprised at the speed of the reversal given Biden's long history of explaining his abortion positions in terms of faith, but aides realized that as a frontrunner, the attacks weren't going to let up, and his campaign reasoned that the fallout within the Democratic primary may outweigh any long-term benefit of maintaining his previous high support. So pretty much this, again, was a political calculation, and the reason why I say that is it's really hard to tell what he believes. And of course, Trump's going to attack him for it. He is not very good at this. This is Trump's campaign's communications director. Joe Biden is an existential threat to Joe Biden. And at least Trump's campaign man, anyway, saying something that I think really we all can agree with. The reversal marks the first leftward concession for Biden from his middle-of-the-road campaign, eliciting praise from Planned Parenthood and the Narrow Pro-Choice America for joining the majority of 2020 Democratic candidates on the issue. I mean, I really haven't heard of any, at least major 2020 Dems that don't support it. So Biden's dramatic and awkward flip-flop is the latest sign of just how integral women's rights and voters are to ousting President Trump from his office on the heels of dramatic midterm elections that have paraded women to Congress. New data, including an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll out this morning, and a study released last month by Brian Schaffner at the Newhouse Professor of Civic Studies at Tufts University, shows that attitudes about abortion and women in general will be key to the 2020 race. 3/4 of Americans say they want to keep in place the landmark Supreme Court ruling Roe v. Wade that made abortion legal in the United States, but a strong majority would like to see restrictions on abortion rights. But views on various restrictions are nuanced, per the poll, but the most acute division is between women of different parties. For women of different parties, 77% of Democratic women identified as pro-choice, where 68% of Republican women identified as pro-life. So, yeah, there is a big split there, and it's not like just because you're a woman you have to be pro-choice. Like, that is far from the case here. While Schaffner's study concludes that Trump's hostility towards women has becomes part of the Republican Party's brand in the 2018 cycle, this hostile sexism emerged as a strong predictor of the House vote in 2016, ultimately contributing to Republican losses. In 2018, the sexism-based divide appeared to cost Republicans more votes than it gained them. This can be most clearly seen in the analysis of vote switching, which showed that lower levels of sexism were strongly related to switching from voting Republican to Democrat in 2018, whereas the levels of sexism produced much smaller swings in the opposite direction. It remains to be seen what this predictor of a partisan divide is long-term trend or more directly associated with Trump himself. But regardless, Schaffner found that sexist Americans were strong supporters of Trump, where non-sexists strongly opposed him. So yeah, I mean nothing really that we can't really expect now. So yeah, but before we move on, I just want to ask this question to everyone: like, do we really agree that Joe Biden, who can't seem to really make up his mind on abortion, do we really think he's going to be a strong fighter of a woman's right to choose? Like, he's going to be a strong defender of a woman's right to choose after opposing federal funds for abortion nearly all of his public life, and until like yesterday, and like being so beholden, as we know, literally copy and pasting his policy positions on his website from neoliberal think tanks and corporate outlets or corporate entities. Like, do you really think he's going to fight for you? I just have a hard time really seeing how anyone could see that. I just do. So yeah, like just think about that about this story. So yeah, as we turn now to the White House, where Mexico is proposing a possible deal to avoid tariffs. U.S. and Mexican officials are discussing the outlines of a deal that would dramatically increase Mexico's immigration enforcement and give the United States far more latitude to deport Central Americans seeking asylum. According to a U.S. official, a Mexican official cautioned the court is not final and President Trump might not accept it. You never know this guy, right? Remember, tariffs on Mexican imports are scheduled to go effect on Monday. The details are that Mexican officials have pledged to deploy up to 6,000 National Guard troops to the area of the country's border with Guatemala. Show of force, they say, will immediately reduce the number of Central Americans heading north towards the U.S. border. The plan is a sweeping overhaul of asylum rules across the region that would require Central American migrants to seek refuge in the first country they enter after leaving their homeland, two officials said. For Guatemalans, that would be Mexico. Yeah, how it works is any migrants who made it to the U.S. border generally would be deported to the appropriate third country, and any migrants who express a fear of death or torture in their home country will be subjected to tougher screening standard by U.S. asylum officers, likely to result in rejection. And personally, obviously, you hate this. It's not a good thing that this is happening. Like, you want to see people be able to get asylum. These people are obviously traumatized. And, I mean, if they can prove it, they should be able to get in. But I think obviously the biggest thing that this needs is a better streamlining process. Kind of a way for people to be able to get in, a way for people to be able to get in somewhat easily so that there is not that much of a big problem. Like, it's all not just, like, not everyone's freaking out. So, which is, it's a little ridiculous. So, anyway, like, again, there's so much data on this, and it's really hard to find a solution because, again, as we've talked about before on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, like, there's such a divide on this politically, and many people, especially on the right, want nothing but, like, destroying of these people, which is really sad. So yeah, Trump family members are in Europe right now, and they're promoting themselves on their European trip. As parties go, it's hard to top a state dinner with the Queen. But President Trump's sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, tried to keep the revelry going by going on an impromptu pub crawl in Doonbeg Island, where they brought rounds of Guinness for the locals and reveled in the Adoration of Village, where the Trump family owns property. Our colleagues David Nakamura, Toulouse Olunuripa, and Amanda Ferguson of the Washington Post report, not just Trump, but the Trumps, decidedly plural, as the nation has hopscotched on official duties between as the president hopscotched on official duties between three European nations this week, his four adult children, and also including his daughters Ivanka and Tiffany, have been prominently involved in many high-profile moments. If the display sought to project the Trump as global goodwill ambassadors for the United States, it's also raised questions given the president's refusal to draw strict boundaries between his official duties and private business. So the question is, who is paying for the family members' participation in this drinking fun? And whether American taxpayers will be on the hook. Has emerged kind of an unresolved subplot of this, with newspapers in Scotland and London scouring the State Department databases and reporting on the fancy hotels and expensive limousines contracted by the U.S. government. During the trip, the Trump children have documented their exploits on Instagram posts, touring Buckingham Palace, observing the aerial flyover in Normandy, pouring pints Behind the Bar in Doonbeg, a modern-day slideshow of wish you were here family vacation moments for the public back home. But instead, the public is still suffering under the regime of your dad, which is, again, it's just outraging. It's kind of it's again, incredibly tone-deaf. So it's just something we'll definitely have to find out more about. Let's just put it that way. All right. In the next few weeks, the Supreme Court will decide whether next year's decennial census will include the Trump administration's controversial question on citizenship, which is already being asked at each Census Bureau's American Community Survey to a smaller segment of the country's population. In the 2017 survey, 1 in 12 Hispanics did not answer the citizenship question, allowing Washington Post reporters Ted Melnick and Kate Rabinowitz to examine where millions of Hispanics would probably be missed if the same question were added to the 2020 census. The very simple question is: is this person a citizen of the United States? Could lead to a 2020 undercount of 6 million Hispanics, or about 12% of the Hispanic population, according to a study published this spring by Harvard's Shorenstein Center on Media Politics and Public Policy. Ted and Kate worked with Harvard to map out just what states would be most impacted by the Hispanic undercount. It was revealed last week. The administration's proposal was crafted specifically to give an electoral advantage to Republicans and whites, as we saw with the guy who had died and had this thing on his hard drive about how he wanted the citizenship question, kind of revealing really what we all know, is that this would be given electoral advantage to whites and Republicans, and this was specifically done in that way. So this would happen. So believe it or not, all the Hispanic states are decidedly blue areas, like where there's the most Hispanic people. You got New York, you got D.C., you got Phoenix, Arizona, Houston, Texas, Los Angeles, all through California, and it's really pretty crazy. So, so Trump lashes out probably in the worst possible place. It seemed just like another day on Twitter, Trump slamming Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and Robert Mueller, but the president also added his traditional Mueller phrase, 13 angry Democrats. But all of these lines and more came in a 60-minute Fox News interview conducted with the crosses and flags of the Normandy American Cemetery and Memorial in full view, a place where more than 9,380 American soldiers are buried, most of whom lost their lives in the largest combined naval, air, and land assault in history. That's because Thursday, again, as I'm sure you've heard, was not just another day, but the 75th anniversary of D-Day. So, this is pretty crazy. So, not the best idea to do by any stretch of the imagination. Pelosi said she wanted to see President Trump behind bars, the remark that has Trump so upset this time as the House Speaker telling colleagues behind closed doors, I don't want to see Trump impeached, I want to see him in prison. But for the gusto of that slam, Pelosi remained steadfastly opposed to opening impeachment proceedings against the president, a position nearly 60 House members openly opposed for now. Pelosi is saying on Thursday, Pelosi's leadership team unveiled a new promised resolution that would hold Attorney General William Barr and former White House counsel Don McGahn in contempt. The measure would authorize the House Judiciary Committee to go to court to force those two to comply with congressional subpoenas. And I mean, if you're not holding someone in contempt at this point, like, what are you doing? If you're not going to impeach someone, at least hold them in contempt. Like, there's no way. You got to keep going here. That's for sure. Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, has indicated that impeachment jurisdiction has been the Judiciary Committee that has impeachment jurisdiction has been pressing Pelosi to approve an impeachment inquiry for several weeks. Pelosi has resisted, as she did during the Tuesday night meeting, first reported by Politico. Nadler has laid out the legal justification for an inquiry, as a committee staff and lawmakers argue that opening official proceedings will only strengthen their legal standing to compel the release of documents and testimony. So, McCarthy also made another impeachment slam in Normandy. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy also chided Pelosi during a Thursday morning Fox News interview from the ceremony that he and Pelosi attended. At the moment, we weren't about the party, we were about the country. I was hoping I hope we take that back to Washington. Not wanting to put somebody in jail, but Americans first. Yeah, you should tell your boss about that, bud.